Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nunn. Mr. Wolf, thank you also for joining me and stepping in and filling in Toby's big Canadian shoes.
He's entertaining one of our friends down there this week. As you know, Mark
He
is
is.
down there on vacation, so they're getting together.
Yeah, I saw some pictures today. I'm waiting to get my trip down there to Cabo too. But yes, he is down there seeing an old mill blogging buddy, and I'm sure they had some good times and probably talking some stories. But Mr. Wolf, you're an expert. We've talked many times. You have been high up in the military and political circles. You're very in tune with what's going on, not only from your past careers, but also your current career.
Why don't we start off with probably what's going to be the latest news and what Biden will not be doing when he gets over to the Middle East. He is supposed to be basically on the ground here very shortly, if he isn't already. And what we're reading in the news about cancellations and what does that really mean to the purpose of his visit over there. I think, if I may, I think that the conversations that I have seen running around today have been very telling. Namely, that he is over there to block Israel from taking extreme action against Hamas.
That's what it appears. I mean, it took him a long time to get over to Ukraine or meet with the right. He didn't inject, and not just him, but if you look back at any of our presidents, right, when there's an active situation, whether it be a hurricane, wildfire, a war, right, they don't usually inject themselves. Most of the time they have the excuse, especially when it's a natural disaster, that they don't want to slow up relief and distract resources, and they want to wait until things have calmed down before they come tour the area and stuff. So this is an active combat zone. You still have rockets going up every night from both sides, missiles and drones and artillery rounds, and you have the bulk of the Israeli Defense Force amassed on their borders, ready to launch. I mean, everything is lined up. They are in line and coordinating and planning. And yet our president's going to go fly not only to pretty much an active war zone, but a very small war zone at that, right? We're not talking about a lot of land space here. There's not a lot of places area to hide, right? It seems to be that the thing that they're going after is, like you say, to delay, because what else would he be doing? I mean, I think he's shown through the terrible withdrawal from Afghanistan and everything else, all the times he's vice president. I mean, he's been completely wrong on foreign policy every single time, even as a senator and a vice president. What is he going to go tell the Israelis? What advice and mentorship is he going to give them?
I think he saw this as a chance to go in and be seen as the mediator to try and mitigate whatever the Israelis were going to pour out on Hamas. And I think his target in his visit is to go in and say, don't go in, don't go killing everybody, don't go, decimating Hamas. And I'm going to go talk to Egypt, and I'm going to talk to all these leaders, which he's not going to do now.
Yeah, that's not happening now, right?
They've all happening.
Nope. They have all RSVP'd as a big no.
Big nil, yes.
Yeah.
Joe, go home. And recall that General Kurilla, CENTCOM commander, is also in the AO. Right. I think, and this is my personal opinion, I think he's over there to say, see all these ships that we're pushing out to sea in the Red Sea, the Med, and the close to you guys. We're not going to let them do anything if you go in and look like you're just murdering everybody you run against. I think they're there to try and put the brakes on whatever Israel has had lined up and was planning on carrying out, that they are not going to assist Israel, while in the same breath, Israel is telling us and telling our media that they have very strong support from the U.S. and are thankful for it. I think in the background, that is not the case.
Well, I don't think they've ever shown them, this administration has shown themselves to be a big ally of Israel, regardless of Blinken's background or anyone else's. But, it is, I'm not sure Israel needs us. I mean, I just saw footage today or yesterday, right, of the seaborne attack happening, and IDF was just pretty much spraying them and gunning them down in the water as they jump from burning boats. I don't think they needed our Navy. They have a very capable Air Force, mostly at the benefit of our defense industrial base. They have the most current stuff that we have. They've been a strong ally. They have they are honed and trained in warfare and have been. I mean, they've been surrounded by enemies on all sides and the ocean on the other. They are much more experienced, I think, in conducting not only combat operations, but mount combat operations in urban environments, much more than we are. I don't think they need us. I think they would not surprise me if they said, you can take your toys and go home.
I think the only thing they need from us is the munitions that they like to buy. I said, all those F-35 munitions you got stored on that aircraft carrier, can we buy some more of those?
Yeah, can we swipe our? Can we? What's your Venmo? What's your Venmo so we can send you some? Yeah. I mean,
they are really, I think Biden and them are there to try and mitigate what they think the damage is going to be to save their friends in Hamas and the Palestinians.
I mean, whatever the damage is we're going to do on them does not even compare to what they've done to the Israeli people. The people, right? Whether they are leveling buildings or killing fighters, what they're not going to do is burn and behead babies or cut babies out of wombs and then stab them as they're still connected by an umbilical cord. Israel's not going to do that. Just like today, it was today or whenever when the hospital bombing happened, right? Excuse me.
Troy, as you and I both saw in Iraq, and I've got the photos, and as you know, I covered the media and worked on the intelligence stuff over there. This hospital bombing that it is apparent that Hamas did is right down the line of what ISIS or AQ was doing in Iraq. We saw it going into Fallujah. We saw it going into Nasiriyah and the other places, Mosul, in Iraq. This is exactly what they would do. They would attack a hospital, blame it on us, and then, months later, when it really didn't make any account, find out that it was, whether it was by purpose, by accident, their own fault that the incident happened.
We saw this in Afghanistan where they would literally attack us and run back into villages and probably usually go in and out the village, knowing that we would pick up. They ran into there, and then once we RD'd or attacked or air attacked a village, they couldn't get out in front of cameras quick enough of dead children and bodies and blame it on us, knowing darn well that their whole point was to do that. They needed camera fodder, if you would, versus cannon fodder. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Now there's evidence apparently. There's embassies, there's fires in front of them, and the whole world is now looking at Hamas as a victim because of this. But Israel Defense Force says they have evidence via video and drone footage of one rocket, which was not accurate, which is not uncommon, that there's a whole slew of rockets and one goes off and falls short or something like that and hit that hospital. Now, that could be the case. It could have been an accident. It wasn't intended, but it still would be at the hands of some terrorist cell within Palestine area that launched it, whether they meant to hit the hospital or not, right? But they are quickly playing it up that Israel went in and strafed and bombed a hospital, which, what's sickening me, Mr. Wolf, is I heard something to the effect that I think it came out of our administration, the State Department, publicly saying, reminding Israel they still have to follow the laws of warfare, which, if so, is sickening in itself, because it's like you're automatically assuming and calling them guilty before we have one shred of evidence. You don't need to remind Israel of that. I think they're very aware.
They need to remind Hamas of that quite a bit of time.
Right.
But Hamas has already proven that they don't really care.
Like any terrorist organization,
that attacks families and non-combatants in that way have already disregarded it. Everything else is nil. They've already shown that.
Right. So, it's we find that with any terrorist organization. So here we are at with this terrible bombing, hundreds of people killed. Like I do, that this isn't actually much different than in our own country, where a shooting happens, right, and immediately everyone says, "Oh, it's some conservative Republican white dude, and he did it, and he shot at that school, this and that." And then when the evidence comes out, it was a Latino, it was this, it was that. And also for actually the last number of shootings, they've been transgenders and they've been that, and that narrative falls off, right? Or there were mental issues documented and the family ignored it. that it falls off, right? It's always the big bad gun and some white Republican MAGA person shot up a place. And those are great talking points for the first couple of hours and all the lamestream medias. But once the truth comes out, there's no apologies, there's no revocations of that or anything like that. Just move on to the next story. This is going to be the same way.
Except if it involves us or Israel, or whatever, then they'll repeat it for the next 6 months.
Well, right, and
it just goes away.
Yeah, and in those other countries, which they have a very limited source of media and that kind of stuff, they'll just keep, just like the madrasas, just like the imams, they'll keep pumping that crap out of essentially the big blue loudspeaker, and just keep filling people's heads with lies until they believe it, right? Which actually isn't much different than our own country. It's just our big blue loudspeaker is one of about a half a dozen channels that you just happen to watch. But yeah, so it's interesting though that these world leaders will have canceled. I'm really trying to figure out whether the president is going over there to delay this attack or do whatever. I mean, who's he going to meet with? Is he just going to sit in his hotel room? Or I mean, who's he going to meet with if none of these world leaders want to meet with him?
Well, the secondary effect is that he is also taking the heat off of the problems in the U.S. By being over there. The story is now about Biden in Israel, not about Biden, the economy, the trials, everything else that's going on back at the U.S. All that is going to be gone for at least the next 3 or 4 weeks, minimally. If it ever comes back.
But like trying to bury your problems in a whiskey bottle, you may just delay it, but you're gonna have to face it at some point, right? You can't drink your problems away. So he can pretend like Hunter doesn't exist, and all this other stuff doesn't exist, but sometime he's gonna come back and face the music. And speaking of which, Mr. Wolf, what do you think the over/under is on him going over there and trying to align with the Israeli people and talk about how he almost lost his Corvette in a house in a
man?
Kitchen
You
fire.
read my mind. Absolutely read my mind.
How Bo
get a quote.
How Bo died in Iraq, which he didn't, from brain cancer, and he understands and will shed a tear and understands what it's like to have your entire family murdered on video and sent to you and raped and kidnapped, and he can understand that because he had a son die in a military hospital from brain cancer. What's your over/under? You think it's going to happen? You think he's going to make it all about him? I would
give that a 100%, probably 110% chance of happening.
I mean, he went to Hawaii and did that. He went to people that lost everything on an island and talked about how he had a kitchen fire, right? I mean, he's told that story so many times. He's talked to Gold Star parents who, especially some of the 13 lost in Afghanistan at the final there at the end, and talked about how he lost his son. He can understand what they're going through. Because that kind of stuff. It's just, I think that's going to happen. And
he's going to land at noon, and they will call lid on everything at 1:00. So, that's how I see these visits going. He has nobody to meet with. He'll probably meet with Netanyahu once, maybe twice at most. There's nothing being accomplished here that Blinken and the CENTCOM commander, Kurilla, can't accomplish on their own remotely. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an active. I hope. I mean, look, Israel has every right to go back, and I mean, they've made it very clear. Israel's not going in there pussyfooting around. They're not saying we're just going to take out a couple people. Nothing. They have made it clear from day one. They are in there to wipe out Hamas, wipe out their leadership, and end them as an organization. I don't think they could. There's no gray area there. It's been pretty clear cut. So they're going to do it, and they have every right to. I hope they do it before he touches down. I hope they do it and say, shouldn't have came. I don't know why you think you were going to slow us up. I would like to see them cross the LD within a couple of hours of him touching down.
That is absolutely 100% correct. They need to run over the LD before he hits ground. Otherwise, it's going to be his influence to make them stop and slow their advance and prevent them from doing it. I think I agree with you.
Yeah, and then BB can say he's too busy to meet with them too. He's in the middle of executing a full ground invasion and wipeout of one of the world's most terrible.
For security reasons, I can't meet with you.
Yeah, and honestly, I think you can now say they're probably the world's worst terrorist organization because, I mean, I think even ISIS looked at what they did and was like, geez, dude, that was a little tough. I mean, come on now. I mean, they really, I mean, they have went everyone loves in today's times to call people Nazis and compare. They throw that term Nazi around like they do racist, when it used to be held for the most, the most terrible human being, just the most terrible evil you could imagine. Right now, everyone's a Nazi. We're a red hat. You're a freaking Nazi. But I think since then, um, I think that they have demonstrated that they are probably the worst, if not more worse than the Nazis ever did.
They were equal to or above ISIS and AQ in their how they conducted this and what they did, by far. I don't even think the Taliban went as far as they did. Yeah, the Taliban attacked and killed people in villages and stuff like that, but I don't think the Taliban really did the atrocities that Hamas did against the Israelis in the kibbutzes and the towns out there.
Right. Yeah, and we've only heard about what we've heard. I'm sure there's going to be a lot worse stories coming out. They're doing the autopsies on many of them, and have said that many have been tortured and raped and this and that of all ages. And so no, we'll see what he gets out of this visit, and we'll see if they launch before he gets here, or they're going to give him the courtesy of coming to visit, get his selfie at the wall, and get out of there, and then they can kick it off. But let's talk about this though. When they do kick it off, the fight. This is house to house. This is tunnel to tunnel. I mean, I've heard over 300 miles of tunnels they've been working on. I mean, this is a fight both subterranean and in the Mount Terranean environment that I don't think anyone's ever done. I mean, Israel's never. I mean, they weren't facing these even in the 6-day war they had, right? That was mostly armor and cross the desert kind of stuff. But can you think, when you're a studier of this, you're very astute in combat operations all over the world. Do you think anyone has fought a fight like this with this amount of underground environment?
The only thing that comes close to this that I can recall, there are two instances that I would come up with. That is the World War II fights against the Japanese on select islands, such as Iwo Jima and some of the others that were dug in and buried into tunnels in those islands. And the second would be the U.S. drug war in the Southwest, where we fight anti-tunnel events on a daily basis, where smugglers and drug dealers and stuff are digging tunnels, massive tunnels, every bit as extensive as some of the tunnel systems out of over there in Israel. That we see those, but we use a lot of the Israeli technologies in our tunnel work. When I was at Northcom, one of the things that we worked on was determining which of some of those technologies were worth advancing, which are the ones that we're looking at as we went to see and find those drug tunnels, because we knew the Israelis really had the technology on that.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think they've been at the extent of the? I mean, there's a lot of tunnel fighting, but I mean, this is, IDF is. I mean, they've got to be wired. I mean, the booby traps got to be insane. The anxiety trying to clear those. Do you even bother clearing, or you just
Vietnam? Anybody? Vietnam tunnel fights? Anybody?
Right. But I mean, even those were hastily done, right? I don't think they're at these guys have been perfecting these for years. I mean, you can.
Well, the Vietnamese had hospitals, they had sleeping quarters.
That's true. Yeah,
they had headquarters in their tunnels. Theirs was extensive, especially when you remember what happened at Ai Drang and how extensive the tunnels under that mountain that they never even got to, because they never affected the battle that far. But once they did, they were shocked to find out how extensive. I think that is about the closest approximation you can find to what Hamas has done.
I saw some awesome video the other day of them deploying what looks like a whole bunch of bunker busters. They were, and I was a mortar guy, right? We'd put stuff on delayed fuse, and that round would bury it, a tenth of a second. It would just, the explosion would go straight up, right? Because obviously the round is buried enough that the force would go straight, and you could tell the difference between a delayed fuse and that. But these bunker busters are burying in there, and I don't know if you saw this video, but it was like one after another. It was like boom, 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 and they were all shooting straight. It looked like they were tracing a tunnel. I'm wondering if that's going to be their technique of just don't even bother. It ain't worth the bodies. There's no intel. Just flatten every one of them. Right.
And it also works as a deterrent. Don't bother digging, because we're going to dig you up no matter what.
I heard before they pumped seawater into them when they attacked them before. That there was one time.
I don't know how they could do that because not all of them are along the coast. They're going to be inland, so trying to pump seawater into a bunch of them would take, quite a bit of a logistics problem.
Maybe it was ones that were near the coast. Yeah.
The issue I find troubling with all of this is how they're blocking any of the civilians from leaving the area. How they're saying the Gaza Strip is not going to allow anybody to depart. They need as many shields.
Just like we talked about, they're fine with killing people so they can have a talking point.
Or hiding behind them, not so much killing, but hiding behind them. And you, just like ISIS and AQ did in Iraq, no different whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, and in fact, they're executing Palestinians trying to leave. Right, they're not allowing them to leave. They're doing that, and just as bad as that is, I guess the UN has tried to get a whole bunch of humanitarian assistance in there to Gaza today, food, water, fuel, all that kind of stuff, and then they said Hamas stole it all. Guess what happened in Somalia? That's the same reason. That's exactly what happened in Somalia, right? The warlords were stealing all the UN, all the rations, all stuff. So they don't. The Hamas does not care if you're coming underneath a baby blue UN flag and you're bringing in stuff for the people. They don't care about the people. This is what amazes me. These freaking leaders, if you were to call them that, and these politicians are that ignorant to the fact that you are not dealing with a nation state. I've been talking about this for years, Wolf, and I know you know it too. I'm not telling you that you don't know, but we win wars in years past because you kill more people and destroy more infrastructure of the enemy to the point where they're sick and tired of losing people and infrastructure, right?
Because they're your will.
Because they're a nation state that cares about their country and their borders and their infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. You destroy enough of it, they finally give up and say, okay, stop, like quit blowing up there. You drop a couple H bombs and Japan gives up right away, right? That's because they care about it. Our entire fight against terrorists is not that fight. We've talked about it. They'll kill their own people just for a talking point. They'll do it just to change the narrative. They don't care how many of their people you kill. They'll run them through madrasas by the tens of thousands to march in front of you as cannon and camera fodder. So why you think sending aid is going to have any different result like that? They're going to care about getting aid to these people. They don't care about these people.
All you're doing is resupplying the enemy. That's it.
That's all you're doing. And I mean, dude, I've served in the Army a long time and I was a leader and all that kind of stuff, but I was just a first sergeant, right? I wasn't a general officer and I wasn't, an ambassador, nothing like that. It doesn't take a lot of smarts to figure this out, right?
But it's the guys in the grounds that can see the real truth that's going on, not the guy sitting in an office 25,000 miles away or whatever it is. It is that sergeant, it is that NCO, it is that private that actually sees what the results of those decisions are as it goes along.
Yeah, it's amazing that they're still trying to pump that stuff in there, and then and now Israel has shut the borders down, not allowing cross, and of course the nice talking point in the media is that all this humanitarian aid sitting at the borders and Israel won't let it in.
Jordan has shut their borders down. Egypt has shut their borders down. Basically, the only body that has a border open is partially in Israel and partially in Lebanon, and that's only for select people. And
interesting.
Egypt
talking about the refugees,
Jordan, nobody's getting across.
Right. Talking about the refugees, these are fellow Muslims. Saudi Arabia's not taking them. Qatar's not taking them. Egypt, like you said, all of them aren't taking them. Right. Yet we have super ultra liberal communist freaking American hating politicians in this country, right? That like to pretend that they're fire marshals.
AOC, we're looking at you.
Or Fire Marshal, what is his name there, Jamal, right? That want to bring for free Palestinians over here and resettle them in our country, and want to bring them to New York, which has a sizable Jewish population. Just want to state, right? And by the way, the Americans, they're evacuating out of there. They are evacuating them to other countries, and then the Americans have to buy their ticket back here. But they're wanting to fly Palestinians to the States when all their fellow Muslim brother countries around them, they don't want to take them at all. That kind of tells you something. If they don't want to take the Palestinians, and they align with them culturally and religiously and everything else, why would we bring them here? We have enough criminals coming across the border as it is.
You know what I like seeing is all these very wealthy Jewish people that have been supportive of our educational institutions like Harvard and Yale and Penn State and some others backing out and saying, "Take us off the board. We're not going to do this anymore." Not only are we closing our checkbook, we're leaving campus. We are not going to associate with people that are willing to support and defend terrorists or terrorist activities. No chance. Not happening.
Yeah, it's amazing what is we're seeing coming out of the higher ed and the university. Now, granted, it's not all universities, right? It is mostly places like NYU, George Washington, Harvard, very liberal, very ultra blue places, right? And so of course they get the cameras there first. But how we're seeing this just vitriol, this anti-Israel, anti-Semite, pro-Palestinian, pro baby murdering, because that's what it is. Look, you're either for murdering and burning, beheading babies, or you're not. Pick your choice. There's no gray area in between. But how
What's
all
the
this is
over
coming?
under? What's the over under, Troy, for it happening at the Air Force Academy?
Yeah,
Just saying.
or Naval Academy or West Point, right? I think it's a very very low possibility. But this is coming out. These are the future leaders and future business leaders and business people of America. And I saw some of the video. There's some that are obviously not from that area of the world. There's probably some that are from, Ireland, Massachusetts. There's about some of the whitest areas you could be. They're not Muslim. They're not from that area, but boy, they are marching in line with what seems like the cool narrative that they're being told to do. And as sickening as it is to see that happening, it is encouraging to see business owners and professors saying, "Don't hire
Yes.
these kids."
Yes. That is very encouraging. That's something we haven't seen in quite some time. Is people willing to change, and it looks like this wokeism type of attitude is long gone. I think this is the turning point or the tipping point
Yeah,
for that. I think most of them are going to start turning against them. Thankfully.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad to see people have the backbone to stand up and not just go quiet, right? So they're not sitting there going, don't
Oh,
not
those
going to say,
kids.
yeah, those silly kids, they'll learn one day. I mean, this is significant what they're out there saying, and just the hatred that they spew on the megaphones and all that kind of stuff. But that should make you think. Um, what and it's amazing too. I saw the ones they were out marching in, I think, NYU, and they the guidance they were given is to wear masks so you can hide your identity. Boy, how brave you are. How much you care to stand up. But everyone's wearing masks like it's 2020 because they don't want to be seen. You're like, if you believe in something and stand for something, um then stand up and go for it, right? Don't hide behind a paper mask. um if you believe in it, put your name on a dotted line, right?
I
That's
think
that.
that also these people are going to find out the repercussions for having such an attitude when they find out they can't get jobs. The law school, was it Harvard Law or Yale Law, that found out that their job offers have been rescinded. They're going to find out that having this kind of an attitude with these kind of people involved is going to be very detrimental to their health and their well being.
Yeah,
So
it will.
what are we
Go
going to
ahead.
do about our border and all the guys that I think there were two Iranian nationals on our hunted list that we needed to look for that they caught on the border yesterday or today? Do you think we're going to face anything? And I preface that because of something I want to follow up on with it.
Well, I mean, our enemies of the world have been pretty adept. I think we saw that in 2001 of getting people in our country and just hiding them in cells and waiting to activate them. This is a proven tactic that works. Whether that's coordinated all this with those that are coming across. I mean, you got to think that there's no reason to think that it's not. Um,
Agree.
so, I mean, we're not doing anything about that. Like you said, Biden has run over across the pond. He can hide away from the inflation, the immigration, and everything else, and focus on that and become a pseudo wartime president. I don't know.
The one thing I was going to bring up on that is, as we both have discussed
Hmm.
before, the units that have been alerted or being sent from the naval assets that are now in the Eastern Med and the Red Sea, the 101st Airborne, which I believe is on exercise over in Kuwait, and the 26th MEU, which has been alerted, that is based here in the U.S., that is going to be heading over. And whether or not Kurilla really has the wherewithal to commit those forces for whatever reason, or is he using them only as placeholders to force Israel to acquiesce to our demands? We are not going to join you if you go on and slaughter a bunch of Hamas.
Well, you're assuming Kurilla. I mean, that's assuming Kurilla has the authority to make that decision.
That's true. Or has already been told to. That's what he's going to conduct this.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure they would have. This is obviously going to spawn a huge international incident. I'm sure though those decisions are being held close to the Pennsylvania Avenue. Either by Biden or whoever's actually running the country.
What is Obama? Where is Obama, and what is he doing right now?
Yeah, where's he at? That's a question. Yeah, he's probably on the puppet strings. But yeah, so it'd be interesting. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if something does happen from cells, God forbid, someone coming across the border, maybe that'll make people start to wake up and realize. I don't know, right? Or actually stand up and start having a voice about it instead of just complaining about it to the TV. I think all the polls have shown that majority of the country considers the immigration issue as one of the top issues of this country. So it's maybe this will make people really start to be boisterous about it, regardless of what political party they align with.
So. I had heard that the 18th Airborne Corps has been alerted as far as canceling leave in schools and stuff like that. And I just wonder if that is the entity that they're going to send overseas, or are they going to send them to our border to secure it because of the threat of, those insurgents, let's call them, using the border as an access point to come over and plant people in here.
They need those voters. They need those future voters coming across the border. I don't think they'll divert anything to that. I think the narrative and talking point of the left is welcome everyone in, and there's a couple bad apples, but everyone else is so good. I think they'll let that keep pouring across. But you and I both know that whatever hits the media and whatever is announced by the administration, Department of Defense, is like 10 to 15% of really what's going on, right? They feed enough out there for the media to get excited about and chew on. But you and I both know there's probably a ton of other things in place right now, moving right now and happening that obviously are not being made. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that's happened in Ukraine that, there's never been talked about, that there's never been admitted to, and that kind of stuff. It's got to be happening in this case too.
I mean, something when you bring up Ukraine, there's something that happened over the last part of the administration. Back when I was at CENTCOM, Israel was not part of the CENTCOM playbook. They were not part of us, and were not, part of what we would do as our daily ops. They were handled by EUCOM. And at the end of the Trump administration, based on the Oslo Accords that they signed over there, Israel was moved under the purview of CENTCOM. And they thought that in a gesture to build better relations among all the countries that CENTCOM dealt with, that having Israel as one of those countries was a benefit. The whole time that I was there, the dozen years that I was there, that wasn't the case. They saw it as keeping Israel separate from CENTCOM so that the member countries of CENTCOM didn't see us as taking info to Israel directly or acting as a direct intermediary so that we wouldn't be put in that position. This is a very interesting development.
Yeah. And when do you think, when did that happen?
That was at the latter part of the Trump administration, but didn't take effect until the Biden administration.
Okay. So it wasn't like in direct with what's going on now. It wasn't like they just made this change.
No, this is a precursor. And you know what? I think the benefit is, you can imagine the EUCOM commander having to deal with both the Ukraine issue and the Israeli issue within his command at the same time. It would be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. That that would it'd be a lot of resources you're trying to split between two different areas. As you know better than most, there's so much that goes into that, trying to run that fight and bring all the information in and make effective decisions and all that kind of stuff, and accurate decisions. That'd be pretty tough for any staff or anything. So no, it is interesting. And the troops deploying, I mean, the administration is saying, and obviously you can't take a thing they say for truth, right? But they're saying, oh, it's only going to be, medical and support and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, well, okay, the 18th Airborne Corps doesn't guide those kind of operations. The 101st, I mean, there's a lot of forces over there in Kuwait, in Syria, in the Sinai. We have a lot of, units located in the Middle East. Whether people realize it or not, there's a lot of forces in there that could come in Syria that could come to bear. You don't need all that, or you don't start rolling Marine Expeditionary units to provide, first aid. You roll the USNS Comfort over there to do that, right? You put a hospital ship out there to do that kind of stuff. Not nail eating, crayon eating, hard charging Marines. So
I think the naval assets that we placed over there have been more of a detriment toward or deterrent toward Iran than anybody else. It certainly doesn't play into anything Hamas would do. Really, I think it was a deterrent to Iran, thinking that they could join in this fight, or Syria for that matter, because having them embarked right there off the coast, that's a short flight over into Syria, or sending them up the Suez into Iran.
Yeah. I think I'm going to make a prediction here for you and the listeners. I'm going to call this one, and in a few days I'll admit if I was wrong or not, but I think we're going to hear from little Chunky Monkey Rocket Man here pretty soon. He
North
does not.
Korea?
Yeah, he doesn't like being ignored. He doesn't like other people having the media. If you go back and look at, he'll do something. He may launch some rockets into a sea over Japan. He doesn't like it when when Zelensky and everyone else starts getting all the attention. He wants to make sure that he feels like it's an ego thing. I'm convinced. He wants to make it feel like he's a key player on the world stage, and that he wants people to remember that he's still there, and that he could really screw things up and that kind of stuff. So I'm saying right now,
prediction.
I'm saying right now, by the end, probably by Sunday of this week, we will probably see him do something. Either, like I said, they'll launch them, they'll test fire a missile, they'll do something just to remind the world that North Korea is still here, and they're big. They can play with the big boys instead of the big boy table too. So,
just before it came on the air, they were mentioning that there was some saber rattling by China. So you're probably not far off that they want the attention back on them, or in order to put pressure on the U.S. and say, there's all these entities out there, all under Biden, as we've been hearing about for days, every bit of this crap, all handling up under Biden's administration. They're all finding there's no repercussions to whatever we want to do. There's no way the U.S. can handle North Korea, China, Ukraine, Israel, all the rest of them. All
just think, look, let them make a move on Taiwan. There's no way we're going to deal with Taiwan, Ukraine, and Israel. No way. No, just those three. Just take North Korea out of it, in my opinion. Let them start poking around at Taiwan. Let China start doing some stuff. We're not going to react to that. This administration can't handle it. He goes to bed at 8:00. He can't walk up a set of stairs. He only has so many handlers, and they could see them easily testing and seeing what we're capable of. And the world knows that the Secretary of Defense is also not far off of being a bumbling idiot who does not have a proven track record and on how to handle stuff. And they're testing them. They're testing them like, guess what? The last administration was never tested because everyone was scared to try to test that guy because he was so unpredictable. And as much as people hated him because of that, it kept this world a lot safer because he was too unpredictable of what he would do. And when he did do stuff, he took people out.
Soleimani, let's take a look at that. He made decisive and very strong actions. Taking out Soleimani is one that I like to recall for one.
Baghdad Zakharwi or whatever, the dog in the tunnel. Yeah. Yep. I mean, he was quick and decisive. But don't forget when Obama gave the order to take out bin Laden, There was only one person of his circle that was against it, and that was Joe Biden. He's the one that recommended not to do it, that there wasn't enough intel. It's yet another example of why he's wrong in every foreign policy decision. But
I wouldn't
maybe
limit to every foreign policy. I'd say to every decision he's made. Period.
Yeah. I can't believe he didn't send Kamala over there. She could be the Israel czar. I mean, I know she's busy handling the border. I mean, I know she's busy going around the universities, the space program. She's got a lot on her plate, but I mean, she should be able to be the Israel czar too. They should send her over there. I'm sure she could mediate, and handle stuff. But
dude, that's one way to strike fear into the hearts of Americans, is the thought that Kamala is the only one left over here running the show. That is bad.
Well, yeah, but right now she is. But I mean, he could have sent her over there. That cackling laugh could have probably brought everyone to the peace table and all that good stuff. But yeah,
I suppose she would be laughing as she described all the atrocities. How can you believe they beheaded babies?
Yes. They didn't even let him get on the. They didn't even. Yeah, she'd be like, if they had electric school buses, they'd be on there. Give me a Venn diagram of all the deaths that have happened. Right, that would be her. Yeah. So the troops deploying thing, it'd be interesting to watch. We're not in those inner circles anymore, but Lord knows we do have some contacts still. But it'd be. I could just imagine the contingency plans that they're being told to prepare for. And having been through some of that stuff myself in years past, right? Everything from we need to go in there and evacuate, you need to be ready to go in there and establish defense, you got to be ready to go do. I mean, these poor battalions and brigades, or whatever they're going to have, or MEWs, are probably being handled every possible metal task and scenario under the sun, and have a plan drawn up for every single one of them. With probably none of them going to happen, because once that first tank crosses the LD, it's game on, and all those best laid plans are thrown out the window. As we know, it's Frago City after that. But yeah, so it is. Man, it's just you mentioned the weakness, and just what this administration portrays. I just mentioned how the Trump administration really didn't have this. I mean, do you think it's because of that is why this is all happening and being tested? Is there the reason why it happened? Why Hamas launched this attack now and didn't launch it maybe in 2018, 2019?
It's when one of your parents travels out of town. They're not there, and the other one that's left is the one that you probably not as respect as much. You're going to test your limits. You're going to see what your limits are. They're doing that, and they're actually exceeding them because they know there is no repercussion to what they want to do. No one is going to hold them in account. And even if they fail, okay, so what? Lost a few soldiers, lost a few this or that, but no one's going to do anything to us. We're right back to where we were a couple of years ago, back building for the next one.
But do you think they counted on Israel to be so... They had to know Israel would be this upset. I mean, do you think they counted on Israel saying, we plan to wipe you off the face of the earth?
That brings up a really good point, Troy. There's something I brought up with some others I discussed with. When they launched those attacks on Israel, I'm very surprised that they didn't do the same thing in other countries, even the minor ones, anything, whether it be against embassies in light countries or in Europe, the U.S., doesn't matter. They caught everybody so flat-footed when they launched those attacks against Israel. I think they would have done the same against some other countries had they had some, other people attack or conduct severe raids or something in those countries. I think their miscalculation was not in allowing or asking their cohorts to do the same thing across the globe until after what they had done in Israel.
Right. They probably weren't thinking on that grand scale, is what your thoughts are?
Yeah, that they didn't realize that what the effect would be. I think that they'd had a grander one. I think everybody would have shut their doors, so to speak. They would have been so concerned with protecting their own borders, they would have left Israel alone, and Hamas would still be having effective attacks against the Israelis right now, because nobody would be sending their leaders overseas because they were more worried about what was going on in their own homelands.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, it's I'm just wondering, obviously Israel has retaliated before. They have no problem in handling their own business. But this is that they came out pretty quick. Within 24 to 48 hours of Saturday of saying, I think it was 24 hours of saying, we're wiping them out. We're going all the way. And I think the entire country is behind that, of Israel's behind that decision, because the entire country, I believe, I'm sure there's not a person in Israel that hasn't been touched by this personally, one way or
Yep,
another, through
that's true.
besides running and diving from rockets and all that kind of stuff, but just through family members, friends, coworkers, something like that. One interesting thing I heard, boy, talk about hindsight's 2020. I haven't verified this, but I've heard it from some good couple sources. Is that starting a number of years ago? I think somewhere in the mid 2000s, all houses built in Israel had to have a safe room, had to have a protective safe room because of the rocket attacks and bombings. Any house built kind of like that was code, right? They had to have one. Um, and for most houses and families, that's where they put their kids. Their kids' rooms were in the safe room because it was, they would rather run to their kids than grab their kids out and try to run to the safe room. It's better to have them in there from the get go, right? And it's like, okay, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
That's just where we're
Absolutely.
living. The other part that is terrible is it was part of the law of not to have a lock on the safe room, because if there was a bombing or collapse that that have to get in and get to you, they wouldn't want the doors locked. So as part of this law or rule or whatever it is in Israel, you had to have a safe room built, and you were not to have a lock on it so they could reach you and get to you in case the rest of the building was collapsed around you.
So how does that make it a safe room if you can't lock somebody
Because
out? I don't get
it
that.
wasn't safe from people, it was safe from bomb. It was a bomb shelter essentially inside the house, and they didn't want to. You could not have a lock on it so they could get you. Boy, what hindsight is 2020. They were not built, and these rules weren't made for an attacker into your house. It was for ordnance flying into your house.
So
And
Hamas had a air force.
So Hamas knew this, right? This is
Yep.
common knowledge and public knowledge over there. Obviously, we didn't know, it's not in our world, but they knew this. So when they went into those small towns and villages, they knew there's no way to hide and hide in the safe room. They could get in. They're not allowed to have locks. I am sure that policy is changing going forward.
Yep, you
Um,
can bet on it, or
but
being
just, I
ignored,
mean,
one or the other.
families essentially made themselves sitting ducks. Um, inside, and a lot of families, if they're not in the military, they're not allowed to have weapons, right? They can't. They can't. It's a crime in Israel, from what I understand, and anyone can write in or
They
comment or
did
whatever.
rescind that over the weekend. They
Over the
did
weekend, they
allow,
started handing stuff out. Yes,
yes, and saying that anybody that could carry a weapon could have a weapon, basically.
right. But kind of hindsight's 2020 on that one. A little too late, but yes, it was prior to that. Prior to this attack, it was punishable. It was you were not. It was there was no Second Amendment. You were not allowed to have a gun if you weren't in the military. And everyone knows from videos and pictures of from Israel, right? You'll see a couple gorgeous looking women in bikinis with M4s slung over their shoulder, because they were in the IDF and they always had to have their weapon with them. So it didn't matter what they were doing or whatever. And people saw that, even myself included, Wolf, and thought, man, I thought the whole country was kind of armed and heavily
Yep.
and ready to go.
Yep.
But apparently that was not the case. So
I'm surprised. I thought it was a little more extensive than that as well. That anybody that wanted to carry could carry.
Yeah, yeah, and but they really relied on their IDF and expect them to do it. But just the sitting duck safe room just blew me away. But again, they never expected. You see a stabbing or shooting in a street where a Hamas or Palestinian comes across a border
Blowing up a
checkpoint
bus.
and shoot someone. Yeah, but no one's ever went into houses before and done that kind of stuff. I mean, and
Or
some of the
schools.
or
Going into
schools.
schools, attacking kids. Yep.
And now they're finding evidence on a lot of these dead terrorists that they had plans. They had battle plans. They had their op orders. They had maps. They were purposely going after schools.
And body cams. Surprisingly, a lot of them had body cams on, which
And a lot of
I
evidence
did not expect.
Yeah, they're all for great propaganda, right? They knew what they needed to do. They wanted to show how good they were and this kind of stuff. And luckily for Israel, a lot of those dudes got dropped, and they have found evidence through the GoPro cameras or body cams of where they were. I mean, they have evidence of them torturing people, murdering
Yep.
people, all this kind of
Yep.
stuff. They have,
Yep.
I mean, they videoed their own, including some guys videoing their own demise. where they were videoing and got popped, and just that was it. But yeah, they were in there like it was a Call of Duty game or something, and running around to build a narrative, to build propaganda after the fact.
One of the things I saw that those body cams help push back against is the claim that the camp followers, for lack of a better term, were the ones that were conducting the atrocities, not the Hamas fighters, but the people that they allowed them to follow behind them as they went through and attacked and overrun the kibbutzes and the different Israeli towns. That these civilians, for lack of another better term, are the ones that were conducting it. But that just wasn't the case, because it was the Hamas fighters wearing the body cams that were conducting just as many, if not more, of the atrocities than any of these camp followers were doing.
Yep, yeah, and they've recorded their own crimes against themselves.
Yep.
And so yeah, that's definitely a different take too than any other stuff. And we've seen some stuff coming out of Ukraine from some of the fighters, fighting on the Ukrainian side, where they've have, head cams and GoPros. I mean, when I was in Afghanistan in 2006, we didn't have GoPros back then, but we had small digital cameras, and we would, run them and set them up in our vehicles and stuff. But I mean, to have essentially an invading force like this, I mean, I don't know the total number, but it's dozens and dozens of people with cameras on, doing stuff. So I mean, look, they had propaganda footage out of them, training with the paragliders and all that kind of stuff, right? They put great music to it and that kind of thing. But
yeah, our good friend Susan over at Soldier of Fortune has been receiving daily briefs from the IDF and provided imagery of some of this stuff that's going on. And she, a longtime military journalist, has been disgusted. Actually, can't view most of the material because it's so bad on the atrocities. She said it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, even
back in the day. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Back in the day, this would be stuff that would have been published out on LiveLeak or Ogrish.com or one of those old sites.
Right. I mean, even Netanyahu himself was posting on his X account, right, of pictures and videos and that kind of stuff. Bibi was putting, by Sunday, Netanyahu was putting on his personal account pictures and videos of like the horrible beheadings and burnings and all that kind of stuff. He's wanting the world to know there is no sympathy to be given to this evil, right? He knows that he has to fight that, whatever the narrative is and the talking points put out by the one side, making making Palestinians look like victims and Hamas look like victims from the the horrible Israelis. Yeah, so you have a leader of a country doing it out of his own account.
I can't see Biden putting anything up like that. I just cannot see it being done.
But I'm not sure he knows what X is or Twitter. I think he's still on MySpace, and his people handle that stuff for him. But
now DeSantis or Trump or one of those guys, I can see them doing that. I could see them posting up some select imagery, but not those guys. Nope.
Yeah, I would see Trump doing it if he wanted to just show the horrors of whatever. But
this is how bad these guys are.
Right.
Yeah. You see how evil they are.
No, this is a fight. Like, I mean, unfortunately, whether we're seeing Ukraine and Russia, we've seen the stuff that we've been in for over 20 years and everything else. I mean, this is another fight that is, I mean, the 6 Day War was a 6-day war, and we are well over that now. And again, this is a fight that's going to be subterranean and on the surface, in the air, coming in from this. I mean, it's going to be every aspect. And unless Israel backtracks on what their initial stated goals are, they are rolling through and going scorched earth.
Now, as my grandpapa used to say, they opened up a can of whoop ass. That's what they're getting ready to do.
They sure did. That's for sure. But yeah, hey, we covered a lot tonight, almost an hour. Anything we didn't talk about you want to hit on, Wolf?
One thing and one thing only, and that is, if Iran gets into this, you think we've got expensive gas right now, if you think that problems with the oil supply being threatened because of Biden depleting our national reserve, you ain't seen nothing yet. We are in the most precarious position globally for energy supply that we have ever seen. We've got no backup. The solar guys, the wind guys, it's not going to keep it up. We got winter coming in. You made a prediction about North Korea coming in. I'm making a prediction that we're going to see a very, very severe winter if this turns ugly and we lose our oil supplies.
Yeah, because Saudi's aligning with Iran and talking to them versus talking to Israel now, and yeah, it's going to get a lot worse. But hey, maybe that's what someone on the left wants, so they can drive their green narratives, right? Other
Buy
green
Tesla.
initiatives.
Buy Tesla.
Yeah, right. Or buy anything that's anything that's a remote, a oversized remote control car, because that's all they are. They're battery vehicles. They're not electric. The only electric thing I ever drove had a stick on it connected to a grate over the top of me. We bounced off of each other. That's the only electric car there's ever been. Everything else just runs off a battery. So it's a high powered battery remote control vehicle. But yeah, that's a good point. If Iran gets in this and what this means, not only from us not having a strategic oil reserve, but just if they get into it in general, right? It's going to be, if they step up and try to back and be part of this. I mean, I saw
first thing they do is they hit the Straits of Hormuz and they bottle things up, and it won't take much to do that. That's the only thing they've got to do.
Right. Yeah. I saw a meme earlier that pretty much showed Biden climbed at the plane saying he was going over for the opening ceremonies of World War III. So
that may be prophetic. That might not be a meme. That may be prophetic.
Yes, yeah. I'll have to send that one to you. But all right, Wolf, thank you so much, man. Great talking to you. A lot of stuff happening. I could see a couple more episodes even popping out this week, even just by myself. There's just a lot of stuff to cover. Hey, if you are liking this, enjoying it, please sure to like our page, like our channel, follow us on Twitter and everywhere else. Any comments, comment on this on Facebook or wherever you're watching on YouTube. And let me and Wolf know what you think. If you disagree with us, agree with us, or whatever, we would like to hear it. We will definitely get in a dialogue with you. So with all that being said, thank you, Mr. Wolf, for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and watching another episode of Stu and the Nunn, episode 320. This week, it's all about Israel. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Stu and the Nunn Show, and we hope you had as much fun listening to it as we did hosting it for you. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. You can find all these links at stewandthenunn.com. We will talk to you again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Commodity Outdoors, Veteran Outdoors, and Listen 9 Fight Company.